My practical advice on that is, unless you are an ad hoc committee meeting one time to give a specific recommendation to a governing body, or you've got advisory in the statutory title of your board or commission, or in the function, I would stay away from advisory and consider everything governing. It's all public. No one could ever argue that it should have been talked about in public. That comes up on occasion. How many make a meeting? I should have quizzed everybody, but it's right here on the screen. It's 2 or more, right? Over the years, I've had these weird questions, like for some reason people think it might be 3 or 4. I don't know where that comes from, but 2 people make a meeting. If Mr. Schamberger and I start talking about business, if I'm on the board, like Montine and Mr. Schamberger, Montine and Jim start talking. I know a lot of people in the room, so I'm saying Mr. kind of interchangeably here, I'm sorry. But I know Montine. So y'all start talking out in the hall about business, well, you got a meeting on your hands. So just don't do it. Avoid it. Talk about it in here. Committees, like I mentioned earlier, advisory or not, maybe subject to FOI. Social gatherings are hard. I know y'all's meetings every month. You kind of get together and you have dinner and you have several meetings. Be really cautious. I know you have a lot of standing folks that come in here, your advertising folks that will be at dinner. Just try to keep it light. Talk about the Razorbacks and are they going to beat Missouri State? Do that stuff. And you can talk about the state in general. Just don't do stuff you would do in here. It's not a meeting of discussion of government business. It's incidental and intermittent. So, a little light discussion. If it's more than just maybe what's going to be on the agenda next time, I would stay at it. That comes up a lot. Like, hey, we should talk about Mount Magazine. I heard Mount Magazine earlier. Let's talk about that at the next meeting. Okay, I'll call staff and get that on the agenda. That's probably okay, but don't get deep into the discussion. Try to keep it very incidental, very intermittent. And I'm going to give you the, everyone hates this, the lawyer answer. It depends on what a meeting is. So it really does. But if you keep it light, don't get too deep, generally not going to be a meeting. We talked about the types of committees. Here's the type of meetings. Regular, which is your regular meeting. It's always, every month, generally y'all meet. That's a regular meeting. It gets posted just like normal. It's on the website. You can call a special meeting, and there's a long definition there. I don't want to get the impression it has to be an emergency. If you really drill down the definition, it's just not your regular meeting time. We meet, the third Tuesday of every month, but hey, something came up, we're going to meet the third Tuesday and next week too to approve something. So you just have to notice it a different way. The APA, I'm not going to get too deep into that. You know about your rules and that kind of thing. That's a different public law that's a little bit tangled, and I won't get too deep into it. But that's where the calendar requirement is on the website. You got to have it no fewer than 3 days before the meeting, and time and place anyone who requests under FOI. Special meetings are only 2 hours, so you got to post it 2 hours, and essentially it goes to anybody who has been asked to be notified of such meetings. I don't know if you'll have a standing list or not, Elaine, but some agencies have meetings that they do pop up special, and they'll have a standing list of interested parties. We had a couple of regulatory divisions at labor, like electrical. They had a standing list of people that wanted to be notified of any meeting. So that automatically went out, regular or special. But it's a pretty quick turnaround. If y'all really need to get together for something, it's just 2 hours. So it's not bad. You just have to notify the folks in the proper fashion. New law, I believe it was 19. I could be wrong. It might be 21. As I age, I'm losing my memory a little bit. But it's recent that these have to be recorded. A lot of folks recorded them anyway, but it's a requirement now. You got to keep it for a year. So I think that's just so the public knows what was discussed. And think about it from a practical standpoint. You've got minutes on all these meetings, but what was really discussed? What was the flavor? What was the discussion? So it's got to be recorded now. Okay, here's the scare you to death stuff. FOI violations can lead to civil suits, criminal prosecution, and the interesting thing about criminal prosecution, it's a Class C misdemeanor, and you get the bad stuff, jail, sentence, fines, attorney's fees, but it really requires just a showing of negligence. And I won't get too deep into the mental state on criminal things, but it's just negligence. It's not intentional. It's not I knew I was going to do it. It is negligent. Now look, practically speaking, you got to really almost, for a prosecutor to pursue this, you've probably seen some cities in Arkansas that have had repeated problems maybe in the paper. The prosecutors don't really want to get after you. They want it to be a civil, but if you keep doing it, there is a okay chance the prosecutor might decide to press charges. And here's the real thing, and I'm not a PR consultant, but I get called all the time, and people ask me about the optics of things. And I've been doing this 20 years. I think I know what looks good and what doesn't look good. And when you have a situation where you maybe violate the FOI either really or by perception, visibility, press, just the optics of everything. Yeah, I don't think I'm speaking out of turn here that people kind of are suspicious of the government, right? And once you get on a commission, people get a little suspicious, like something's going on here. What really happened? What really happened at that committee? What were Montana and Jim really talking about in the hallway? That kind of thing. So just the less of that you can do, the better, in my opinion, just for optics and press. There's always going to be a question of fact for the lawyers in the room about what was actually discussed, was it actually a meeting? But if you limit it, you don't even get to that. And we're the defense firm for the state, right? So my job is to be a nervous Nelly, very conservative, wave my arms lawyer, make it easy on us to defend. So think of old Daniel in a courtroom one day, or actually our litigators in a courtroom. You probably don't want me in the courtroom. But think of them trying to defend something later and having to explain what someone got a misperception about. Because, it kind of can be a he said, she said later, what y'all talked about in the hallway. So just be careful on that. And in bad press, you can get a spur in the dim gas pretty quick if something of suspicion pops up. Okay, here's some don't do this specifically. Don't discuss board business in emails. I think the emails that y'all used to send out had don't reply all at the bottom. Do they still say that? Well, don't reply all. Because when you reply all, whoops, do we have a meeting here? What's going on? Don't talk to each other back and forth. Now look, if you hit reply all and say, and John says, I can be there Thursday. Okay, look, I don't want to be too deep into the FOI. But stuff like that is not even a public record to begin with. Would you like to have lunch? What time is the meeting? That stuff, as long as it's not real business, probably isn't a public record to begin with. But anytime, remember I told you in the beginning, if you talk about it in here, that's when you stop and don't do it. Try not to hit reply all. And I would tell you, just as an agency lawyer from back in the days, it is a pain to look through FOI emails sometimes, because somebody's got to look through them. And the more you send, well, here they are. And, we collect them all, and if you hit reply all, then there's 50 more than there had to be. So just be cognizant of that. And one day somebody has to look through all this stuff if you maybe get an FOI request. And that's a poor me lawyer story, I guess. I guess that's my job. But, just be aware of that. The more records you create, the more is out there to get FOI. Don't hold secret telephone conferences. We've had a run of that just around state government where people think it was secret, like they didn't see the notice on the website. We've had some controversy about that. Nothing major, but it happens. So any phone call, watch out for that. Don't have a conference with 2 or more. I put huddle on here. This really applies to hearings more often. 2 or 3 members will be off in the corner over here, and they're talking, like about a hearing. And they're over there talking about, man, do you think Petrino is going to light up our defense? I'm a little nervous. We can't seem to cover anybody this year, but, I hope it works out. Gosh, can you believe Catalan's hurt? Or, man, I love Eric Musselman. It could be that kind of talk. But to someone who's not up there, who knows what you're talking about? And that creates a narrative maybe that, gosh, they didn't treat me fairly. Oh, the fix was in. You've heard all this stuff just in general, so be cognizant of huddling and that kind of thing. It's just a perception thing. The executive session, I mentioned that. I didn't mention it earlier. Y'all don't have employees directly, so there's really no reason for anyone to go to executive session. The only exception to FOI open meetings is executive session for promotion, demotion of employment, basically, for agencies and commissions that do have that authority. There are some agencies out there that have a random, I don't think y'all have anything like this, but there is a few out there that have a random exception to FOI for executive session for a few things, and they're escaping me now, but they're very, very, very tucked away in statutes, but not very common. Poll via email or telephone. I think you all know, you could always call the secretary, you can always call Jim, you can call Shay, you can call Jeff, who else? Cynthia, you can call everybody in the room that's on staff. But when you start asking them, well now, how is Scott going to vote on this thing? How is Jim going to vote? Don't poll. Don't try to figure out behind the scenes what's going to happen that should happen in public. That happens sometimes on like a rule maybe. People get discussing the rule behind the scenes. Just watch out for that. You can't poll via email or telephone. All right, that's meetings. That's it. Very basic. If you should talk about it in here, don't talk about it out there. Records, it's a little little simpler. Now that doesn't look very simple, does it? It looks like a long definition. But look, pretty much anything you write is going to be an FOIable document. Any doc that's generated, any email you send, any text you send, if it's required to be kept or otherwise kept, and is a record of your performance or lack of performance of official functions, what that really means is, remember I mentioned earlier, like let's go to lunch, probably not a public record. Anything more than that probably is. And this is always a funny discussion. What's lack of performance, right? Like if I have like 500 emails a day where I'm talking about the Razorbacks, that might be showing I'm not doing my actual job, right? So a bunch of non-public record emails can add up to something that's FOIable if the gist of it is, hey, I think you're not doing your job. You're just discussing, you're selling stuff on eBay or whatever you're doing. So it can add up in a different way too. But basically common sense, any records maintained by public office or by public employees within scope of employment are presumed to be public, and same with y'all. Essentially, you're considered employees of the state as a commissioner. You fill out a W-9 or whatever. So technically, you're probably not an employee, but for the FOI, you are. Good rule of thumb. Custody, the physical stuff, staff's going to keep all that, I would think. What you're probably going to have most is your emails and your text, right? That's probably what y'all have. Things that are given to you at a meeting probably are already in-house. So I don't think you need to worry about being the custodian, and that's important because if you get asked for the documents, you might have to kick it up to the custodian to actually hand them over. I think technically, someone could FOI my team personally and say, I want all your records about this. Some of it might be in-house. You just holler at staff and work that out. But just know that you've got to be the custodian in some cases. It is not the person who actually keeps or required to keep the document. If you happen to have it, it's a snapshot in time. You've got the record. Here's a time frame, and that's really more a staff issue, but sometimes I know these come in for a lot of communications, and if you get an email from Jim or Leslie or whoever the PIO is at the moment, I'm not sure.
Jeff Lemaster is our PIO.
Oh, Jeff.
Yes.
Okay, so if Jeff shoots an email out to you that says, hey, look, got an FOI request for X, Y, or Z, please get them to me. Try to turn that around quick because there is a time element to responding to an FOI request. It says custodian must certify in writing records are unavailable at the time and they're in active use and storage. There's AG opinions out there that's more or less anything that's active use and storage. I'm not sure how it would not be, but the gist of it is you got 3 days, basically. Now, for a big voluminous request, Jim can get on the phone and try to sweet talk the requestor into, hey, look, that's a lot of records we got to look through because they'll have to look through for exemptions, things you've got to redact. But bottom line is the quicker y'all turn it over to Jeff or staff, the quicker we can get this turned around at the laws because there is a time element to it. And if it's employment stuff, that's going to be staff. I just put it in here just so you know it exists. Okay, records generally. It's not that hard, right? If you got it, it's probably a record, right? FOI applies to private email and phone. Sometimes that's hard for a new appointee to get used to that, hey, I have a Hotmail account. I still have it. It's kind of people make fun of me for having one, but I have it. So it's on your Hotmail account or your Gmail or whatever, stcglobal.net. Don't get confused. I don't have a state email address. It's not, that email is not FOI. It is. So your phone, your private email, anything you send is going to be an FOIable communication. Emails, texts, chats, any messages. I threw that in there because we've got all this new stuff, right? You get on Zoom, you can chat on Zoom, right? You can chat on Facebook Messenger. There's all kinds of ways you can kind of chat. That's no different than an email or a text. So my advice is just limit that, and then it's not going to be something you have to keep up with or turn over an FOI request. Just, I'd call staff, ask questions if you have something, but just avoid that. The less you have, the less you have to deal with. Email discussions can turn into meetings. I mentioned that earlier. That happens sometimes. You hit reply all, then we start bantering a little bit. The email is always going to be a public record, right? But it might not be a meeting if you don't discuss, but the record itself is going to be FOI. So, and there is a record retention schedule. Jim can get you, there's a little chart, but the gist of it is communications that involve your business have to be kept for a year, basically. So there is a retention requirement too. So I rolled through that pretty quick, but I want to stress, it really isn't that difficult. If you're going to do official business, do it in here or in your committees. And if you're going to correspond, don't talk official business, keep it light, keep it incidental, and if you have texts with staff or whoever, keep them, and they're going to be FOIable. That's all I got. Have I boiled it down enough or too much? Any questions?
Any questions of Daniel? I just want to say, I haven't been on this commission that many years, but I've indirectly worked with this commission for probably 30 years. And I think we ought to be pretty proud of the fact that in that entire time, Montana, I'm looking at you, we've never had an allegation or an accusation that this commission has operated in bad faith to violate FOIA. The only reason that we serve on this commission is we love Arkansas. And we particularly love Arkansas tourism and parks. And everybody on this commission is trying to do the right thing. And nobody's trying to violate FOIA or whatever those.
That's right, you got it.
But this was one of the best presentations I have ever heard. So Daniel, thank you. I think just if it's something that's supposed to happen in here, it doesn't need to be out there. It really boils it down perfectly. So thank you for that.
Sure, anytime. I kind of do this for a living now. I've done this
With
twice
this show.
this week, so. Thank y'all, and if you ever need anything, get through Jim. You can always get to us through Jim, and happy to help, all right?
Thank you.
Good to see those of you I know. And good to meet everyone else.
Daniel was on my speed dial.
And that's FOIA.
He's held up to leaders, he's been good.
Truly, good presentation. All right, where are we? Secretary.
Could I just make one comment
Yeah.
though? Is that, if I had not been involved in city government for many years, back in the 90s, I would not know much about FOI. But I came on this commission and had no training whatsoever, things. So if anybody that's not involved in government would not have known what this is, what's going on.
When I came on, we got, I initially was on Huckabee administration, and we went through an FOI presentation, like this presentation, Rex Nelson did. He was the Huckabee's guy. At the time, he did a fine job.
Well, that's why I think we should be offering training of some sort. I think, and just more than just FOI.
Yeah, oh yeah, it was. It just kind of brought us up to speed on, what you can expect and what you can see. It's really good information.
And don't forget, there are people on this commission also that come from the other side. I mean, I have a background in newspaper, we got Bob with radio, we got Mike with TV. We come at it, or did when I owned the paper, come at it from the other side.
Sure.
And so it's very interesting to be on this side and realize, and you know when it's happening. And it makes me uncomfortable, and I'm usually pretty aware of it because we've been round and round with, usually it's in my town, it was school board or some agency that, didn't want to talk about anything or tried to tell us that that's not what was really said. And, you just kind of go round and round. And so there are several of us on here who can see both sides. And don't forget that, because that's one of the reasons we're on here, I think, is to be that way and to provide that background. So.
And also Governor Rockefeller, it was him that actually had the FOI, and Arkansas set the standard for the entire United States, if you do the history on that. So that's pretty crazy.
Really? True.
Oh, yeah.
That is very true.
That is because, there was this stuff was going on with background deals, and the government had to be exposed. It's very interesting. It's very boring to some, but it is interesting.
Yeah, we have one of the most restricted.
In the United States.
It is.
Well, I think this commission and previous commissions have done a marvelous job of conducting the business and not violating the public trust. And we should be proud of that. Anything else on this subject? All right. Secretary, is that it? Well, that was quick. All right. Let's get to the finance report.
Referring to Cynthia. I'm supposed to make the financial committee report, but I'm ahead of her on the agenda, but she's going to take the lead, not me.
Good morning.
report, and then, Mr. Chairman, I also want to address a question that came up during the Finance Committee meeting after I finished the financial report, and I'll pass the information out when we're done with that. That's okay, as part of the Finance Committee report. So the financial report for today is for the 2-month period, fiscal year ending August 31st. And the first page of the report is a report of the revenue collections by division. And you can see for Parks Division, the revenue collections that we received for conservation tax. And we have compared to August of last year, 11.8% increase for the month of August. And year-to-date, conservation tax is up 9.8% for those 2 months compared to last year. Park operating revenue for the month.
It was a good number, Jim.
For the month of August, the park operating revenues is up slightly, 0.36% from last year, and down 2.6% for the year to date. And we'll give a little more detail on the operating revenues when we get to that page. The other revenues listed there, NCRC grant funds, are just a matter of timing difference. You can see that the real estate transfer tax is still up. The month of August is up 7.9%, and for year-to-date, it's up 8%. And then there are other various revenues there for parks. Parks total revenue for the month of August, $7.3 million compared to $6.4 million last year, which is a 14% increase, and 6% increase for the year-to-date. Tourism revenues, the tourism 2% tax for the collection the month for August, and these are actual revenues that we received in August compared to August of last year, is up 8.6%, and year-to-date is up 6.2%. We did not receive any ARPA funds for the month of August for tourism. So the tourism, and then you see their transfer to shared services, their total revenue is $2.3 million compared to $2.2 million last year. For August, 3% increase and slightly down 2% for the year-to-date. For Memorial, their source of revenues is general revenues and their operating revenues, and their GR was the same for the month of August compared to the same time last year. Their operating revenues are up 27% for the month of August and 41% for year-to-date. And our general revenue section, you can see the general revenue that we received for Parks and Tourism Division compared to the same month last year. So total for the division, $11.8 million of revenue compared to $10 million in August of last year. And year-to-date, $23.8 million compared to $22.1 million, which is 7.5% increase. Page 2 is the comparison of the budget and the expenditures for Parks and Tourism Division. This is one of the changes that was made to the financial report that we told you last month we were going to make, is that we broke out the portion of the expenditures, the budget that's general revenue for parks and general revenue for tourism. It was always included in the numbers, it just was not reported separately. So on parks, you can see that their general revenue is all in their salaries and matching. So their general revenue budget is $13.1 million, of which year-to-date they spent 2.6 compared to 2.5, almost 2.6 last year, so up just a little bit. And then their other revenue, salaries and match are below that. So the total salary and related expenses for parks is the $40.4 million budget, and then their expenditures. And then you can see the rest of the line items that make up their operating expenses and other. You see one line at the bottom of that says GR miscellaneous, and that's just M&R proceeds. We get, whenever we send something to M&R, they sell it, they send us money, and they give us a budget for it, and so that is what that is, but they don't get any other general revenue for any other reason. So the total parks budget is $168.7 million, of which they've spent $15.8 million compared to $13.9 million in last year, which is up slightly, $1.8 million. And you can see that the biggest increase is in salary and personnel expenses. The tourism budget, the first part is their general revenue budget that they receive, and they also receive mostly is used for salaries and matching. They have a small portion that's for grants. Their salary and match for general revenue is $2.8 million, of which they have spent $483,000 compared to $481,000 last year. And then their non-GR salaries and related expenses are in the next section. So you can see that most of tourism's salaries are paid out of general revenue. Only $248,000 are budgeted in the 2% budget. The operating and other expenses are below that, and you see a line that says GR grants, that's general revenue grants. Tourism gets a $30,000 general revenue budget for the feasibility study grants, but that's the only other part of GR that they use. So total tourism budget for the year is $27.7 million, of which they spent $2.3 million compared to last year. They're up $900,000. And then War Memorial Stadium is on the next page. War Memorial Stadium's GR, broken down into regular salaries and personal services matching, is $400,000. And their expenditures, $65,000 compared to $57,000 last year, so up slightly. Their non-GR salaries and match are $229,000. And then their other expenses are below that. And they have a small operating expense and general revenue of $10,000. So total War Memorial budget is $1.8 million, of which they spent $296,000 compared to $192,000 for last year, up slightly $100,000, and the majority of that increase is also in personal service and personnel expenses. Total department budget of $198.3 million, has spent $18.5 million compared to $15 million last year, up $3.4 million, which is 22% last year, over last year. The next page is the breakdown, starts the breakdown of our revenues in detail. So the first one is the 2% tourism tax collection. And you can see this is for the month of June. The reporting month of June was $2.5 million compared to $2.3 million for FY22, which is an increase of 10.4% just for the month of June. And I do believe, and Travis may have more information, that is our largest collection month that we've ever had for 2%.
Wow.
$2.5 million. And when we had this in June, at that time, that was the largest collection month as well, and then July came in at 2.4. So year to date, we are running 15.7% increase over this same time period last year. So you also have a comparison of the fiscal year chart, so you can see the change in 2% collections for the fiscal years starting fiscal 01 through now. And at the bottom of the page are the tourism expenses that are broken out just for the 2% collection dollars. So that's the 2% budget and the 2% expenditures as they have been spent this year. The next page, which is page 5, is the 1/8 cents collections for the month of August compared to August of last year. You see we had an 11.8% increase in revenues for just for the month of August, and our year-to-date increase is 9.8% for the 1/8 cents revenue. And also on this page is the conservation tax budget and expenditures. The next page is the operating revenues by park. And as reported earlier, there's a 0.3% increase, a small increase in August compared to August of last year, and slight decrease, 2% for the year-to-date. The parks with the highest, largest increase for the month are actually Ozark Folk Center, had the largest increase of $64,700, and Queen Wilhelmina, Petty Jean, Prairie Grove, and Bull Shoals. Folk Center's increase related to cabins, restaurants, craft exhibitions, and concessions. The next page shows those park operating revenues by source. So you can see that camping, cabins, lodge, sell-prepared food, and sell of merchandise continue to be our top 5 revenue collections. We have a year-to-date decrease in camping and cabins, and an increase in lodging and sell-prepared food. Just to also note that we had increases in other sales that are making a part of that difference, but the overall decrease, $167,000, the majority of that is in camping. The next page is just a page of the detail for the park operating revenues, so that you can see the comparisons of month to month for fiscal 23 to 22, and a fiscal year chart. And then the bottom of the page shows you the park operating expenses, their budget for just their cash fund. War Memorial Stadium is next, page 9. And War Memorial Stadium for the month of August compared to August of last year had a 27.9% increase. And year-to-date, their revenues are up 41.1%. And if you look at the events, War Memorial Stadium revenue by events, you can see that softball is up, but the biggest increase is due to the graduation ceremony and other games that we did not have revenues for last year. And the last page, page 10, is a statement of our projected income and expenses. And the top portion shows the actual revenues that have been collected through the month of August, and the projected revenues for the remainder of the year. And the same thing for the expenses, actual expenses through the month of August, and the projected for the rest of the year, and what we expect as our ending fund balance for each of those accounts. The rest of the report will be for the 2% collections by county for individual information. That is the end of the financial report. Are there any questions?
Are there any questions of Cynthia on the financial report? I do want to say, and you guys know that the Finance Committee has been working, well, they've been listening closely to Cynthia. She's done all the work. But these have gone through some revisions to try to make them easier to understand, easier to follow. It's still tough for most of us who are not familiar with government accounting, but Cynthia has done an amazing job. The Finance Committee has worked hard. Mike Gibson, John Gill, Montaigne, a number of meetings trying to understand these numbers. It is a $200 million enterprise. So it's difficult to keep it simple. But Cynthia has done an amazing job and has shown great patience with this committee as we've tried to work through it. So Cynthia, we thank you. And with that said, there's no other questions of Cynthia. We'll need a motion to approve the financials.
Second.
Austin, thank you. Montaigne made a second. Any discussion?
I just say that they are easier to read, simply. They are easier to read.
They are easier
They
to
are
read.
easier
So are easy
understand
to
and
read,
read.
yes,
They are.
yes,
They
it makes my job easier.
It is easier.
Good, good. I'm
And-
glad it makes it easier for you.
And I think the single most important thing that has come out of all these meetings, as Cynthia has stressed, is transformation is really difficult to understand. Caleb, at one of our first meetings, said you guys need to try to understand this. And we've been trying ever since. Cynthia has said, transformation is not costing us money. There are savings, they're hard to identify, but Cynthia has said numerous times, Parks and Tourism is not spending more because of transformation, there are savings.
That's good.
That was important to hear.
That's
So,
good.
we have a motion, we have a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right.
The other item is just, it will only take just a few minutes, there was a question in the finance committee meeting about the wine tourism revenues and what was transferred out of those revenues when that happened. If you remember, as part of transformation, the wine council was transferred to the Commerce Department. And so this schedule that I sent you is just to answer that question, to show that there was $941,000 total revenue that had been given to Parks and Tourism at the time that we were responsible for the wine council. And that was just 2 fiscal years, 2018 and 2019. Some of you may remember that. And what we did at that time is we intentionally kept the monies and separate, and we reported on those separately, but we haven't reported on those in a while. So on here is the last report that was given in June, the wine council revenues, and you can see the collections for those 2 years were $944,000 at the time. And the treasury balance, as you can see at the top, that's what was in the treasury for that fund. And then you can see that when they made the transfer, they transferred exactly that amount that was in those funds. And that's how we kept it separate, to be able to know that all they got was the money that was given to us. It was stated that it was to go into the tourism account, but we did not mix them together in the same account. We put them in a separate account so that we can track those funds separately.
Very wise.
And I think when this happened, we gave Montaigne to the wine commission or whatever it's called. And Montaigne, you did that for a while. And then you got off the wine commission? Yeah, no.
When I
Okay.
retired.
Well, any other questions about this? And we no longer have anything to do with the wine industry.
Correct.
Thank you for this.
All right, thank you. John Gill, you flipped with Cynthia. You want to give us a report on the finance committee?
Well, the reason I flipped, so you can hear what Cynthia's done, and as you all have already observed, is phenomenal. She's cleaned up the records where they're understandable, and you got a full feel for it just now. The only thing that was hanging was the issue of the shared services amount. And if you look back on the screen, go to the first page. If you look down in the lower left-hand corner on the first page, under War Memorial Stadium, the next entry is the general revenue and the transfer for shared services. That transfer is ultimately our share of shared services. So it's now there in a much more understandable and much better presentation form, I think. So we can see what our share is. As originally presented, the entire shared services budget got into this report, so it's now separated. All we're doing is reporting ours. Other than that, that's all I have to report, Mr. Chairman.
And John is filling in for Mike Gibson. Mike is the chair of the finance committee. But he told us he could not be here today, so John is pinch hitting. Thank you, John. Anything else in the world of finance? I'm going to kick it over to Shay and Shammy to talk about some parts.
Bless you.
Let me look at the meeting report. I can do that real quick. We had a pretty big agenda yesterday. We ran through some of the stuff pretty quick to get to rates and fees. So I'll go through our list real quick. Shay reported that he attended the NASPD conference in Oregon. He said 350 people attended. There was 40 states represented at the meeting. It's all the state park systems from around the country. You get to meet with people and do what he does, so he gets to interact with them and network with them and learn things. It's really good to attend those kinds of things. As we saw our state parks visitation go spike this last couple of years, that's kind of been a nationwide thing. It's happened around the country. It's not just Arkansas. One thing you did mention that kind of surprised me, you said the recreational RV camping had increased 62%, which was, I thought, a huge number. And he said that in Arkansas, the economic impact was $761 million. And those are big numbers. We talked about Salt Bowl and how it went pretty smooth. There was about 29,000 in attendance. There were some medical emergencies. It was a pretty warm day, and it was 8 incidents, of course. Ozark Folk Center, Bluegrass and Fried Chicken Festival. Very good event, very successful event. The theater was sold out first time in years. Restaurant had people lined out the door. The craft area was full of people. It was profitable. It was a really well-run event, and I asked him how many additional staff he sent up there, and he said none. They handled it with the staff they had on premises. Obviously, more of that was needed up there, and it obviously had a very successful event. That was good news for me. Park Superintendent's Conference is next week. It's at Lake Gray. So that's happening again this year. Outdoor Grants Program. And we heard a report from Matt McNair at, I guess it was at Monticello, about the Outdoor Grants Program. That has since been moved over to the Office of Outdoor Recreation. So that's under Catherine Andrews now, so we won't probably keep hearing any reports on that anymore. The rock climbing and smoking policy that we talked about a few months ago, it's got one final step that goes to the Administrative Rules Committee in the legislature in October. And if that gets sent out of there, it'll come back to us and that'll be approved and that'll be the new policy.
Jim, that's the beaches?
It is.
Yes.
And the smoking, the rock climbing thing is the rock climbers have been asking for that for years. And I think everybody's happy about that too. Janine reported yesterday, that's our new revenue manager, about a flash sale that they tried. And it was pretty successful. They did a 25% discount Sunday through Thursday and ran it on the website. And they had, let me see here, 83,000 impressions, 5,700 click-throughs, resulting in 33 reservations, averaged just under 2 nights of a reservation with $169 ADR, and raised $5,800 for the reservations. And that was just on cabins and lodges. It didn't include camping. So that's pretty successful the first go-round. I'm sure they learned some things from that process, and you know, it was good to try that out. That's kind of the thing with the revenue management we can do now. There'll be more of that to come. Slumber Creek Watershed and Lake Catherine State Park, you know, we've got that rare salamander over there. We're working with a project with Nature Conservancy to study the salamander and how to preserve its habitat, make sure we don't ruin that. Point of Sale Committee, they've established a Point of Sale Committee that they're looking at new programs and point of sale systems, and they're interviewing companies now and trying to improve the inventory management as well as figuring out a way for us to do gift cards. And that's something the Commission's asked for years, and I think it's going to happen. I'm very pleased about that. They're moving pretty quickly on it. They're meeting every 2 weeks, and I think Shay's giving them the directive they really want to answer on this. Club 52 promo is the passport program for state parks. It's got the get out, the get in. It's got a rewards component for everybody to go try to get people out to visit all the 52 state parks. There's prizes and rewards tied to it, and we're hoping to launch that sometime around the 1st of October. So that's a new project. And then we got into rates and fees, and y'all saw the rates and fees. It was in the box. We had a lot of discussion about that. I think we got good feedback. I think the parks staff got good feedback on that. I think they did a wonderful job on laying it out. The recommendation did come from Parks Committee for the entire commission to approve it. but that'll be next month. We want to, it's now that it's been through an open meeting, it's out there. We want to give the public 30 days to look at it, and we want to come back at the October meeting and approve the rates and fees that came out of that meeting yesterday. So we'll be looking to do that. Mike Wilson gave us a report on the volunteer programs and volunteer efforts. You know, through COVID, it's been an issue getting volunteers going again. He's got 2 or 3 programs, internships programs he's been working with, and he's wanting to start up Arkansas State Park Camp Host program. And it won't replace the Good Sam's program, it'll be something similar to that with volunteers. And he's also, he gave us a whole bunch of ideas that he's working through to create a volunteer recognition program, which I think would be good too for the volunteers. So I can't stress enough, if y'all haven't looked at those rates and fees, be sure to look at them. There's a lot of changes in there. And if you've got any comments on those, we'll go back to the next commission meeting. We need to flush them out if you've got any questions about that. And that's my report. Did I miss anything?
Very well.
Okay.
Any
Thank you.
questions for Jim before he turns it over to Shay? Jim,
We had a
thank
good
you.
meeting. We had a good meeting.
Thank you, Chair and Commissioner Schamberger, for that report and good synopsis of what took place. I have to echo that the conversation was very supportive and encouraging, and good feedback was provided to us related to the rates and fees. And I particularly appreciate some of the comments that were made to the complexity of our state park system and the management of all of these different fees, as well as the work of Jeff King, Mike Wilson, and Janine Bruner, who's really driven this program to get us standardized and have an approach. What Janine has done is set us up for the next years to come. And I'm calling this stage 1, as Commissioner Houseworth was saying earlier, this is the first part, the first step for us to really move forward into the next generation of revenue management for state parks. So I'm really excited about it and appreciate your support. And again, as Commissioner Schamberger said, any feedback you have is appreciated. We want your perspective on that. So just a few other follow-up items for my director's report. It was mentioned earlier that we had good news at the Ozark Folk Center. We've seen this year the trend changing at the Ozark Folk Center. If you remember, about 2 years ago, the commission worked with us on some recommendations to improve our expenses, reduce our expenses, generate more revenue. We implemented a plan with 4 or 5 concert event weekends that have just sort of gradually built as we've come out of COVID and continue to do well. The Bluegrass and Fried Chicken has hit its best of all of them, and they've just built through that. I have to say the advertising, I think, is a part of that. We've invested a lot in the advertising promotion of the Folk Center. It's made a difference, as well as the creativity of the staff and their efforts there to make things happen. So it is great to see them in the top 10 of revenue, which we haven't seen in a while, and just their efforts there. But $64,000 were generated last weekend from that event, and so a great thing. Total revenue for State Park System in August was the 3rd largest ever. So we still are seeing high revenue pinnacles for the State Park System, which is kind of interesting at the same time, considering some of the economic conditions, the gas prices, and the weather that we've experienced this summer. I feel like we're in a good place of where we're at, considering some of those things that have been involved. But as I've been saying for the last few months, we kind of continue to see that plateau. If you noticed in Cynthia's report in the parks revenue bar chart, you kind of see that we're trending really close to last year, maybe just a little bit down. But we're still seeing some revenue decreases in occupancy, in camping, lodges, and cabin, as well as general visitation. But we'll see what, I think the real test for us will be this fall. We know we have a proven track record of high visitation and occupancy through the fall. Seeing what takes place there will kind of really set the bar for the rest of this fiscal year and what's taking place there. So we'll kind of watch it closely. One other silver lining in that report that you'll notice is that restaurants have really started to bounce back, which is really encouraging for us. We're finally seeing park restaurants with full or close to full staffs. We're seeing increased visitation in the restaurants, more tables being turned over, and that's making up a big difference in some of those revenue decreases that we're seeing in others. Another thing just I think to pay attention there as well is that the park store revenue is still continuing down. We had such a big year in 2021 with gift shop sales, park store sales. For some reason, we're seeing a decrease there. I don't know if it's the economy or people are choosing to spend their money in different ways, but we are seeing a significant decrease in gift shop sales. But if you remember in 2020, gift shop sales were down. We had supply chain issues and giving supplies and things or resale items to sell. We saw a huge increase after that, so I think we're seeing sort of a plateau or correction in that area as well. So, but with that said, I think what we have to be mindful of is that the sky is not falling, that there's not a issue here. It's just that we're just going to monitor and adjust. We're going to continue to do things, as Commissioner Sandberg mentioned, about the flash sale. Janine has a whole program. Janine came to me and said, our numbers in September just were looking not as good as what they had in the past. And that's when she said, we need to do a sale, and just implemented this idea. And of course, Janine's the type, she's going to run with the concept or idea, and I'm thankful for that. And so we're going to continue to do things like that. She's putting a plan together for that. She's paying attention to a week at a time what's taking place to help us make adjustments to that. That's where dynamic pricing and the discounting, we can discount up to 50% and have a huge impact for us there. So we're also going to be implementing some other direct marketing approaches through the communications team, and Monica's working on those, and Jeff and Master, of ideas of how we can get specific locations higher occupancy by offering sales or promotions of those pieces, and we've got some good plans for it. But that flash sale was the first test for that. So just a couple other items here. Related to NASPD, it was an honor and privilege to represent Arkansas State Parks at the table there and just hear all of the great things that are taking place across America's state parks is what all of the state park systems are branded as out there. I know Secretary Hurst often says she has the best job in the world, but I feel like I have the best job in the world as well, especially in those moments of representing Arkansas in that. I have to say, a lot of other state park systems look to Arkansas State Parks and ask, well, how are you managing this? How are you handling e-bikes? Do you have a policy on this? How do you generate revenues? How did y'all get the Amendment 75? Just all kinds of questions. A lot of other state park systems look to Arkansas State Parks as a leader, and I'm proud to be a part of that. 40 states, park directors were there. Two interesting things that two of the underlying themes that came across from this meeting is that America's state parks have record levels of support through a study that the National Association of State Parks Directors did, proved that we have record levels of support of all time for state park systems across it, which is a positive to have, and that state park systems are more relevant than ever. Is that we know this, we saw this through COVID as people were looking for opportunities to come outside, but that connection has built and maintained and built over the last year and a half. And people are finding state parks as being an important part of their life and part of their well-being and part of their quality of life. And so those all come together for us realizing that the work we do is important to our state. So that's great. We received 3 reports from the RV industry. Next month I'll give you, once I have a chance to really digest these reports, I'll give you a full report on those. Commissioner Schamberger alluded to the $761 million of Arkansas annual economic impact of camping industry alone, which is tremendous. On the national level, the RV industry and camping industry is a $140 billion industry across the nation. So a huge impact that we play a part of in that, especially as the largest recreational camping provider within the state of Arkansas. That includes private RV industries as well. The last thing I'll mention about this is we heard a report from the Deputy Director of the National Park Service. Director Chuck Sams was supposed to be there but had to attend a funeral, wasn't able to make it. But the deputy director that spoke gave the priorities for Director Sams. Director Sams is the first tribal citizen to lead the National Park Service. He's in the Cayuse and Walla Walla Nation for that. But what I found really interesting about this presentation, he gave his Director Sams goals for the National Park Service. And as soon as I heard this and was taking notes and listening to it, I asked for a copy of his goals. And because 4 of them align perfectly to what Arkansas State Parks goals are that Jeff and I have been working on. And we've kind of been working through this goal setting process that we talked about last month. And it just made me feel really good to know that what the work that we're doing in Arkansas State Parks aligns closely with what the National Park Services are. The first one is connect and empower a thriving, diverse workforce. Number 2 was invest in the future of parks. Number 6 was create a national park experience that meets visitor expectations into the future. And the last one that aligned exactly with some of the goals that Jeff and I have written were greatly improve, streamline, and modernize National Park Service management and business practices to ensure accountability to ourselves, our partners, and the American people, which all align to goals that we have as well within Arkansas State Parks. And so at the superintendent's conference next week, Jeff and I and Secretary Hurst will be meeting with staff. We're investing in staff training, as well as the opportunity for us to really say, here's the direction that we're going for the next year and how the work that you do contributes to the accomplishment of these goals. And so we're really excited about that. So with that said, I appreciate the opportunity to attend that conference, and I'll give you some more information next month about the RV industry and what took place from those reports, share those reports with you. So.
Shay, a couple of questions, and I apologize for missing the Parks Committee meeting yesterday. I had a conflict I could not get out of. Why do you think camping and cabins are down for the last 2 months, but lodges are up?
Lodging is still just down slightly if you look closely, but the biggest part, I think, if you take a look at it, is camping specifically. Camping is always dependent on the weather. So if you combine the weather, the heat of the summer, especially May and June, where we had higher than normal temperatures, that's an impact. You combine that with fuel prices, and those 2 items together are going to impact camping. Weather always impacts camping, but to me, that's the best guess on it.
But I think July was down for travel it was down, I think, when I talked to other folks, it wasn't just camping. I think July with some of the challenges. I mean, Austin, I think Jim and I have had that conversation just casually, and Austin, I asked him how his work.
Could there also be a connection to less COVID around and more people feeling safe? I mean, like it's
Consumer
safe to go
confidence.
back to a lodge situation as opposed to camping or RVing where they're not around other people as much. That was just a thought.
Historically, I can tell you, camping, the heat, the weather does affect camping.
It's the most.
And historically, also, gas prices does affect camping. There's a lot of gas to run those big RVs. When you put both of them together,
You put them together.
I think that affects it a lot more. When you have one or the other, it affects it. When you have both together, it probably affects it twice as much.
That's right.
Shay, can we, what do future reservations tell us that we can expect this fall?
I'll have to look into that and report that back next month. I know that Janine had reported for the month of September reservations were down compared to last year for camping, cabins, and lodging. But she did look ahead to magazine for October and November and said it looked like we were on track again.
See, I'm noticing the same thing in my place. My September is going to be down, but my October is pretty strong.
Good.
So it's mostly the weekends.
Blair, what do you say?
My July was down. We tend to have a hard time with the 4th of July. It's right at the weekend. It screws up 2 weeks. We'd rather the 4th of July be on a Wednesday and only 1 week is messed up. So having the 4th of July was on a Monday this year, that had 2 weeks of not strong business, and that made our July down. So, but August through October, looks good.
Sash, how about you?
Echo that same
Same deal, well.
One other aspect that we have seen a big increase is the group business, is we are seeing group business looking, and I think that's gonna really impact the fall season, especially as we enter. So,
By the way, and I don't think Blair and I violated FOIA, but I did ask him last Saturday if a morning Razorback game helps or hurts business. Just curious. And Blair said, a morning game is not as good as an evening game. And then he added with his sense of humor, it's a heck of a lot better than an away game.
We'll take it.
we also add winning into that.
Yes.
Yeah.
equation
Yeah.
as well. A winning season versus a losing season is always.
Final thing on the Ozark Rec Center before we move on and kick it over to Jeff. One, Blanchard Caverns have reopened. I think they still require masks, which is bizarre to me. But they have reopened, and that's going to be Astel, Ozark Folk Center. But we also had sort of a secret shopper up there at the concert. Mike Wilson, Fresh Eyes. What did you think?
It was amazing. I have never seen the crowds like that at the Folk Center. It just wasn't in the theater and not just in the restaurant, through the craft area too. There were folks absolutely everywhere. But again, I mentioned this yesterday, I think most of the credit for the success goes to John Morrow, the superintendent up there, and the team that he has put together. They're just an amazing group. They handle, I mean, we're talking 1,000+ people in that area, just wandering everywhere. They kept them, the craft people were busy, the gift shops were busy. The restaurant too, I think we know Jessica Sterling and the job that she does up there. She just did. She deserves an awful lot of credit for moving folks the way that she did. And I told Shay, I think one of the things that really amazed me is as the line was out the door, Jessica saw that and saw that they were couples. And so she was going to have to put couples, two people at a poor place table. Jessica came in, rearranged all the tables, made a huge long table, and then explained to the folks outside, well, we're going to go family style tonight. She brought the whole group in, and it was terrific. She's really moving those folks through, so very impressive.
Thank you for getting smarter.
No.
Yeah. So that's.
One thing I'd like to mention though, I think Shay and Jeff, we always overlook that they've got probably the smallest staff of as many people that they have to do. I'm talking about statewide, and it's the passion. Everywhere I go, it's the passion. Those that are standing is more passionate about it than most of the businesses I deal with. And I think that's the success, is the people that make it happen. Hats off to you guys.
I agree with that. We have some folks that just love what we're doing. Jessica is a model example. She is retired from the Air Force now, but she was a high-ranking officer in the military related to food service and providing that. And so I could just see her just putting the commands out there and boom, it happens.
This is the way it
And
is.
this is
what we're gonna do.
And we would all follow her in a heartbeat.
And everybody there loved it. They had a great time.
Randy had a question or a statement.
How many birds did you sell?
I'm sorry?
How many birds?
Birds?
Chickens.
Oh, chickens. I don't have that number exactly. Our revenue for the restaurant was almost 19,000. I think the record for a weekend is 20,000, and that's pretty much when you have a restaurant that size, that number of tables, that's pretty much the max that you can get at those facilities. So we were really, really close to that max. So I'm sure she went through a lot of chickens. So, and it's delicious.
This limited concert and heavy promotion on the 4 or 5 that we do. We tried them last year, you guys will remember, but COVID jumped up in the fall and bit us. This seems to be working, and I really do congratulate you and your team for coming up with a great idea. It seems
So
to be
we're going to
working.
keep working that way. So.
All right,
Thank you.
Jeff, all yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Lane, if you could pull up item 11A. The first item that I'll present to you on the agenda is a final approval of a property acquisition at Mount Nebo State Park. The commissioners will recall back in March, you gave initial approval for us to pursue this 146.77 acres. We've been working on, what's the other item there, maybe mislabeled the box here.
That's B.
A was the Delta Heritage Trail.
That's it.
So you all will recall, we've been trying to work on this property acquisition since 1998. And so that was kind of the first efforts we took with this property. We've gotten our final approval as of August 26th from the Arkansas Legislative Council. And so we've come to an agreed upon price for the acquisition of this acreage of $182,500. We have FY22 AMCRC funds that'll handle this acquisition for our division. And so I'm requesting the commission's final approval to move forward with this acquisition. And we'll work with our general counsel on kind of drafting up the paper that goes with closing the deal on this property, and look forward to working with Jim Andrews on that.
I make a second.
Have a motion from Sash, second from Kayleen. Any discussion, any questions?
Were there property lines problems with this one?
Yes, so 46.77 acres are owned outright by the George family. There's 100 acres that we basically have a dual claim, and we have multiple titles that cover that amount. So the $220,000 was the appraised value, and then we kind of negotiated back and forth and come to this agreed upon price that's less that amount. We kind of split the difference here, and we clean it all up and have basically the bench trail and these facilities that were held on dual claim private property will now be fully in state parks hands.
Just want to make sure it's clear all up.
Any other questions of Joe?
We ought to celebrate 25 years of work. 25 years to get this property. It's unbelievable what it takes.
Good job.
All right, any other questions? Do we have a motion?
Yes, and a second.
And a second? Thank you all. Everybody in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? It passes.
So, item 11A, I apologize for having them out of order in my book here. This is a request that we wanted to put before the commission for inclusion of state highway roads. This would add some mileage to the state highway system. For those of y'all that are unfamiliar, the Arkansas State Highway Commission handles institutional roads for state parks and for universities throughout the state. And so this is what they designate SH 600 or State Highway 600 for state parks. And so all of the roads that are off of a main highway that connect to our parks, to our campgrounds, are maintained through a joint partnership with the Arkansas Department of Transportation. So as we develop the Delta Heritage Trail, we know that we want to have good access to our parking areas, to our trailheads, and continue to maintain those roads that provide access on this linear trail that has multiple points of entry off multiple highways in the state. And so we put together a plan, and you'll see in the maps here, we basically have 4 locations that we want to try to add into the 600 series. This would be at Lexa, which is the very northern end of our trail, that would connect Highway 1 to Lexa. It would also be at Lakeview, where there's a short section of gravel road that connects Highway 44 to the Lakeview trailhead. And then at Yonkopin, which is from Watson to Yonkopin, there's a pretty long section of gravel road there that we would like to look at the Highway Commission including in this series, and then a couple of ramps there, already existing trailhead at Arkansas City that were part of the city streets, but then would also be maintained as part of the 600 series. So we've had a conversation with the Highway Department regarding this. I just got an email yesterday since posting this to the box. They're fully supportive of this. They may wait until we actually get some of these facilities finalized that haven't been fully developed yet, such as the trailhead at Yonkopin, to be able to ask for inclusion there. But we'd go ahead and put together the request now so that they'd have that at this time. And so what I'm putting forward to the commission is basically a request to move forward with this request to the Highway Department. And there's been
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion, a tie between Jim and John, and a second from Bob. Any other discussions or questions?
This is a great.
Everybody in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
It passes. Thank you, Joe.
that concludes my section of the report, Mr. Chairman.
Shay, anything else?
Yes, sir.
It is almost 10:30. Why don't we, well, let's take a 15-minute break. We'll come back in 15 minutes.
15? Just kidding, I'm joking. That means it'll be 20.
Caitlin said make it 12.
I'm just I'm telling you, I was in charge for a while. I know. I gave them 5. I was like, for 5 days.
And then I have a different one.
Nice to meet you.
Because I had some.
It's good to meet you.
Yes, I added it to the folder, and then when I was moving the
I'm sure I heard about it.
I was surprised Debbie was like, Libby told me,
And that's
Yeah. Great, how are you? You doing all right? All good? I wasn't available. Watched the game Saturday, spent the night with somebody who drove to Dallas. So I saw the Razorbacks win. It's just crap. It was the worst game I've seen. But I think they did I don't have kids at home anymore, and two I go to family, so. And then the other one's in Dallas, so I got to see all three. Just to let you guys know. This is a huddle. We're talking, I think I just made $1
We always do.
But other than that, the day before the tournament, my son, my wife teaches for Howard. I was here downtown during the holiday. Well, they offered us, they paid us based on what we paid for this dirt. Well, now it's a parking lot at a stand. So one of our first employees was suing them. Next year was 2 years ago. So after 2 years, delays, bureaucracy, and all that, we get to trial a couple weeks ago. They called me and said, you can be a witness, you gotta come back. So I go down there the day before the backwards and attorneys beating me up and all that. The next day we're going to school. It's like a TV for me. I've never been in this situation. But long story short, the whole time the jury comes in, and the government understands. I went. When the jury said it, I just went. I didn't know the reaction. They left the room. I looked at Sean, my partner. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, I don't. It's one of those deals with money I got the account yet, so. I mean, you were in shock. I was like. He was saying about an hour later. I mean, yeah, y'all know. Oh, well, here's the other kicker. The judge or what's his So, you think about that, I mean, that's another story.
To get everybody, we can go in.
But they still have paid us. The reality is we have a high frequency. So it's 20 years ago, that's a problem. So I think that's not a problem. Yes,
Because of that, we know.
Everybody that bitches about we have.
The possibility. Yeah,
It's the best time. There you People who have.
Is that your stuff? Well,
And the deal is you can buy them.
I know, that made me smile this morning though. Cindy, of course Cindy.
They're options, like a vending It's not a big thing. Can you believe that? I just went. I'm still a little.
There's no more case. I just ran it
Good to have you here.
It's a huddle. It's a huddle.
And that's good information.
What I call the whole building.
All right, 2 minutes, everybody. 2 Travis, we need a bullet.
Never have I done 15 in my 2 years.
I say 2 minutes, Bob.
Ever.
Yeah, great.
All right.
And then he races me.
Go ahead, Travis.
You don't have to respect on your part in that.
2 minutes.
My voice will lose.
Ron,
I'll wait until you get John Bill, 2 minutes. All right.
My sister.
No, she did it. All right. As soon as Montine sits down.
All right.
We're back in session. Sort of. Travis, all yours.
Well, good morning. Glad to be here, and hopefully you'll hear that I'm coming with practically all good news, which is a good thing. As was already mentioned, for June, 2% collections, 2.5 million. Not only keeping the continuous streak of record month ever, it was the record month ever. So not just against any other June, but of any other month we ever had. So that's great to see that trend continue. We've wondered as we get into the summer when and if it's going to plateau. So we'll continue to see how that goes. The amount up is lessening a little, but we're also coming up against all those record months we ever had last year too. So despite that, we're still beating them so far. So that is a good thing. I was honored to be able to present yesterday and share a bunch about what we're doing, and with Secretary Hurst, the Economic Impact Report, and that was all, from everything I heard, very well received. We did present the economic impact, which y'all saw last month. I have, for those that weren't there, I do have some reports here and some more over there. It was picked up, I know, by at least 2 or 3 local news. I was Googling this morning and saw some others across the state are just industry-wide. So, quick overview, we have returned to or surpassed all 2019 numbers, except for one area, and that was workforce, employment, number of jobs, which we kind of expected. Despite that, it was 95% of the 2019 levels, so that's actually a pretty strong number, I think. But despite that, the payroll did surpass 2019, so the ones that are working, they are being compensated at a greater level. Hopefully that also helps retention going forward. And as we talk about how do we continue to recruit people and keep people in hospitality, I know for a long time pay and continues to be kind of one of those key points of contention. So hopefully this shows it's pointing in the right direction there. County level data is in. Unfortunately, it was not in time to be in here.
That was my next question.
It will be in online. This report is online already right now, but it'll be added to this. We're hoping by week's end. We got it late Friday, and we needed to do a review. We made a couple. We caught a couple things and sent it back. They're fixing it. And CDRW already has it. The template built to just drop the numbers in, and that'll be added, which I know a lot of our partners around the state, those are very, very useful numbers for them.
And where do we need to go to see that or get it?
It's under, the easiest way is arkansas.com/industry, and across the top, click on research, and it is part of our research packages there. So that is good news right there. Next, I want to talk about the co-op opportunities, which I shared a little bit about upstairs, and hopefully I kind of sold them on some of the stuff we're doing around research and data and all that too, to kind of inform our efforts and our decision, and that we have packages built all the way from a budget of 500 all the way up to 100,000. And so far, we did a webinar to kind of present all these new opportunities. I think it's 39 different opportunities. Am I right, Lauren?
Right around that.
I mean, depending on how you want to break it down. Depending on how you break it down, I kind of just put website all as one, or a couple things I might have grouped together. But there's a lot more opportunities this year, so we did that webinar. That's available online as well. And I know as of right now, there's 77 different conversations going on at some point in the prospecting commitment level of different partners wanting to join us with those options. The golf passport that Jessica has reported on for a while that we're working with Van Wago on, it's a digital passport for the Arkansas Golf Trail, has been launched. We did kind of just the original press release, email notification. We put the media kit and the point of sale stuff out to the golf courses with only that little bit of promotion, which it did get picked up in one news story around the state at least. We've had 75 people sign up, and we'll do a Facebook campaign launching within the next week or two. So we hope with even more promotion behind it, it will continue to strengthen those numbers and be a good thing for the Arkansas Golf Trail. And remember, we have 2 more passports coming kind of on the back end of that. The next one will be craft beverages, so that's breweries, wineries, distilleries across the state, and then scenic byways. Scenic byways? Yeah. Which really, that one I think has the best opportunity to really stretch people to every corner of the state. Let's see, we hosted our region's annual meeting, the first, I think, really good in-person one since I've been here, maybe.
It was good.
And
I think that might have been the only one we've had since you.
and it might have been, I think we did do one online, but it was nothing like this. Caitlin and Jessica put together, a couple of y'all were there, Secretary Hurst was able to welcome, I was. Great energy in the room, good turnout, every single region, including Arkansas South, which still is not yet recognized. They have 4 representatives, and there's efforts there to try to get reorganized. Yeah, correct. Yeah, you're right. 5, you're right. 5 representatives there, and I've since made a trip down there to discuss more with them about what that looks like and strategies to recruit a board, basically.
Travis, just to give you a little highlight to Jessica and Caitlin, they did a really good job of making it informative, but also allowing it to have some roundtable discussion that really, I think, impacted some of the folks that were kind of growing and figuring out what they could and couldn't do. And it was very, I thought it was probably one of the better meetings that I went to from a regional standpoint. And I've went to those for years.
It's the best regional meeting I
Yeah,
went to.
so your team did a great job. Yeah.
Yeah, it was really good.
Well, that was on my notes. It was great information, good energy, and good discussion. So you stole it right from me. Good job.
I'm just highlighting.
I'm just giving you a hard time. Thank you for being there, both of y'all too. Last month, our Discover Arkansas theme was history and heritage, and then we had 7 different articles, and I know we have our regular promotion of that through our social media channels and specific website content there. Let's see, I was in the box. You will not find our monthly tourism report. It somehow slipped through the cracks, did not get added, but it will be added, as well as our quarterly report to the Economic Development Administration of our EDA grant. You'll be able to find that there. But a couple highlights on that. The digital co-op program, where we ran some stuff last year through that. To finish that up, we still have one live component of that, and that's Sherpa. That's kind of an online itinerary builder, semi-influencer, local influencer opportunity. We have 8 partners signed up, with 7 more potentially looking to take advantage of that. I think it's very affordable, and it seems like a really good opportunity for especially some of our smaller communities to take advantage of. Our visitor engagement program, that's the Banwango, those digital passports, already touched on that. The brand evaluation that we're doing with Longwoods, as well as a resident sentiment survey. Those are progressing. The survey will be deployed, I think, either late this week or next week. So that's going well. That's for the brand one. The resident sentiment might be another couple of weeks, but those are progressing well. Strategic planning, that's where I mentioned we're working with Coraggio for the first portion of that is collecting stakeholder input. So the 2 main components of that is a survey of the industry. We actually released it yesterday to the crowd upstairs. I'll put it out next week in my email newsletter, and we'll push it out in many different ways. This is an area where any of y'all can promote it in your communities, your organizations you're a part of. We want to hear from the industry as a whole, and even just citizens can participate as well. The second part of that are in-person listening sessions. Excuse me. We have 5 of them happening this week, with 1 this afternoon upstairs at 2 o'clock. And then we'll have 4 more in kind of northern Arkansas, all across northern Arkansas in 2 weeks. We'll also host a virtual one for those that the scheduling or locations didn't work out. And then we'll do one for y'all, remember, in December. That'll be, I mean, not December, November.
So what's the plan on those? I mean, what's happening with those sessions?
Those are being facilitated and run by them. We are not in the room, so there is no, have to worry about what you say in front of us if there is any of that. From the first two did not necessarily have great turnouts, but they said still had very strong discussion from the ones that were in the room, good feedback.
I think y'all have a good posture.
And yeah, I would think some of our strong areas today and then tomorrow will definitely be good. I know some in North Arkansas hopefully continue to be strong. If anyone needs kind of a separate invite that y'all want to use to send out people to come to those, let me know as well.
Can you do that? Can you send that to us so we can pass it on? Because I want to make sure that there's some people there and I can kind of push them to be there.
Absolutely.
Is that for the survey as well?
Yeah, anyone can take the survey and I can send.
But can you send that to us and share?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yes, I will.
Thank you.
Will do. And lastly is workforce development. This is kind of the last part of what we have planned to work through for the EDA projects. And right now we're kind of working through MIS to determine if some current learning management software that's already under contract that with the state as a whole are suitable for some of the stuff we're trying to do, or if we need to go a different route. So that's an update of that. There's been some good publicity. You'll find this in the report when you're able to look at the box. You get home. Coverage in Southern Living this past month, Garden and Gun, Smithsonian, Local Palette, and many others. Those are some of the bigger ones. And it's not just limited to those. Some of them don't make it in our thing, but I come across different things that have, and I post them on my LinkedIn, and whether it be about retirement, restaurants, golf, all different kind of things. We had 2 of our golf trail participants that made top 100 affordable golf. That is category across the whole country. So that's a great honor too. So we're definitely being recognized over and over as a state for many different kind of things. That even extends to retirement as well. Lastly, we're partnering with a couple destinations and partners across the state to participate in them. Americana Fest, that is happening today or tomorrow?
Starts tomorrow.
Yeah. So we have, I think, 3 different
Americana
statues.
Fest. It's in
And this is
Nashville.
in Nashville, and it's kind of it's a music industry festival, so it's not necessarily for the general
It's not for the consumer.
but Arkansas is getting some extra special attention this year, so we're excited to be a part of that.
We're being featured throughout the whole, our artists from doing with Al Bell, Levon Helm, Johnny Cash. They're doing some really good stuff. And then House of Songs is performing all day long. On Friday, they're bringing in artists from all over the state. We're doing, it's a big deal. Aaron's going from our team. But it's the state, it's us. Who else?
El Dorado. Participating. And
There's somebody else who called me. Somebody else called me. They're coming.
Oh, man, I called you, I can't help you there.
I know, I'm like, somebody else called me, and I was like, talk to them.
I'd ask Jessica on that, but
Yeah.
she's
that's
there.
okay. Yeah. So that, they're going, and we have a booth, and so it'll be an opportunity for us to talk about the industry, and even about production, because we have different places that have production here, and just really highlight the music scene. There's a big historical aspect of it. Yeah, and so I think elevating that opportunity for us to feature our local artists, to give them some love, and with the creative economy being such a big, huge impact on our state, from the artists to the performing artists, we need to make sure that we're elevating it and showcasing what we have, because we have some amazing folks here in the state as a whole.
And this was not on my notes, but I did want, it has been mentioned, but it's been a blur, but I think it was last week, Parks, Heritage, Tourism Leadership got together and had a good meeting, and I don't know what I want to say, but except that the leadership group is very strong right now and really complimentary and work well together. We met with a group asked to come in and hear kind of about the overall department, and it was neat to see Jimmy Bryant with Heritage, Shay, and myself sitting next to each other and pretty much be able to answer the questions for any of the departments, just because there's that much knowledge base going between the three and cohesion between the three, and really complementing each other. I think that hopefully just makes all of us stronger. So, and then I'll end that does end my report, but Weston has a story she would
I have
like to
two little
share.
stories. I like to tell stories. I like to hear stories. I just got back from a trip out west, and my husband and I were eating dinner in a nice restaurant in Santa Fe, and they seated us kind of European style, where there's a long table, and then people are two and two and two. So these ladies were sitting right next to us, and they did not have soft Southern lady accents. They had brash Northeast Coast type accents, and you couldn't help but hear them. And my husband and I were talking, and then all of a sudden I heard they seemed like they were old friends who were seeing each other, that hadn't seen each other for a while, maybe even family. They were reminiscing and catching up, and one said, "Well, what have you been doing this summer?" And the other one said, "Guess where I've been?" And the other one said, "Well, where?" And she said, "We went to Arkansas." Well, I just completely stopped talking. And my husband, he starts smirking at me. He's like, "Your ears just came through." And so I didn't say a word. I wanted to hear what their experience was. And she went on and on about Eureka Springs. And that's where they went. And they did not know anything about Arkansas when they went. It's the first time they've ever been. And she was just taken away by the charm of the city and all of the little shops on all the winding streets. And she kept talking about how pretty it was, and they went on and on. Ended with the other one saying, "Well, we've got to go there." And so that was kind of fun. Then the second thing was...
You didn't ever chime in?
No, I never said a word. I started to, and I thought, well, I might not ever get away. But the second thing is we went biking up in Colorado. And I borrowed a bike. I didn't know I was going to be asked to bike, and so we did. And everybody that we talked to on the trail, when we told them we were from Arkansas, they knew about biking in Arkansas. And they were jealous about if they hadn't been. And that was amazing too. So I came away from that little 10-day trip with two neat stories about Arkansas from people I never expected to necessarily hear that from, and so I just want to share how fun that was. So
Cycling, we're
it's
on
there.
national scene.
I know.
We're there.
Mhm. I think we beat Colorado. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
I think it's
People in
California.
Colorado are jealous.
I know.
Yeah.
I know they are. So
Plus, we get to do it year-round.
that's right.
That's what they're jealous
That's right.
Yep. Anything else for Travis? Kayleen's already left us. Travis, thank you for those reports, and I hope the listening sessions go well. I thought you were going to be in them, so this is a kind of a shock that you're not, but yeah, I can see where that makes a lot of sense. People might open up and say more. Look forward to getting a report on all that, so thank you for that. That concludes the tourism report. I don't know that we have any old business or new business that I'm aware of, unless you all are. Any public comment? Just crickets. Any public comment? All right, none. I will say this before we leave. Let's all cross our fingers for a little cooler weather and some rain so that we can have a beautiful fall in Arkansas, because that is so good for tourism. And it will be a nice economic shot in the arm for Arkansas. So let's hope for that. With that said, Blair, we're going to be down your way next time in October.
Oh, in El Dorado?
Yep, we're meeting in El Dorado.
I was thinking, where am I going?
And with that, we're adjourned.
It's been fun with the index.
That's okay. I can always stop. So I'll see you next month. Take care.